It's 11 a.m. Mountain Time. Welcome everyone to WEC's Reliability in the West discussion series. I'm Travis English, WEC Senior Training Outreach Specialist. I'd like to welcome you to today's discussion where we'll be talking about large load experiences. First, we'll start off with our antitrust policy as we do every WEC meeting. All WEC meetings are conducted in accordance with the WEC antitrust policy and the NERC antitrust compliance guidelines. All participants must comply with the policy and guidelines. This meeting is public, confidential, or proprietary information should not be discussed in the open session. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted publicly. By participating, you give your consent for your name, voice, image, and likeness to be included in that recording. We strive to ensure all the information presented today is accurate and reflects the views of WEC. However, all interpretations or positions are subject to change. If you have questions, please contact our legal counsel. With that, I would like to bring in Chris Raper, our Vice President of Strategic Engagement and External Affairs here at WEC, to kick off the discussion. Chris?
Yeah, thanks so much, Travis. I am really looking forward to today's discussion. We have talked about large loads now for the last couple of months, and we've talked about it from different angles. Last month, we had a conversation with some of the people who are doing the studies and trying to figure out how the grid needs to react and respond to this. And today, we're taking that conversation one step further by having a conversation with people who are right in the midst of it. And so we have kind of a different panel this month than we usually have for these discussions. And I want to assure all three of you that we're willing to come on and chat with us today. These are not gotchas. We are really just trying to get the facts out there. We have a lot of policymakers and commission staff and teams and even operations people who call in to listen to these conversations. And so it's really just trying to have an honest conversation about what's going on, what the experiences are, how we can react and respond to those better as a grid in order to make sure that we're ensuring reliability for all customers. And particularly with regard to Commissioner Richard, and I'll introduce each of you and give you an opportunity to speak, but I want you to know, Commissioner, that we're definitely sensitive to the fact that you may have open dockets on this right now, and to the extent that you can't comment because of open dockets, then we certainly appreciate that. And so if we tread into those areas, then just stop me and we'll go a different direction and ask a different kind of question. So we have Travis Metcalf from Amazon Web Services. He is the Energy Projects Manager for Amazon Web Services. Glenda Oscar is coming to us as an economist from the Office of Policy with the Department of Energy. And then Commissioner Michael Richard is a commissioner with the Maryland Public Service Commission. And I know that all y'all are in kind of the throes of what's going on right now with regard to large loads. And so I want to give each of you an opportunity. We can go in the way I introduced you, I guess, and that's on the screen. Give you an opportunity, like 3 to 5 minutes of tell us a little bit about your role in this, how the conversation's going, what it is that you're focusing on, and how it is that you're dealing with these large load concerns and opportunities on the grid. Travis, if you want to go first.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Really appreciate being here and the opportunity to be on this panel today. So my role in the organization, I've been with Amazon Web Services for the last 2 years. And prior to that, I spent 20 years with another utility local in the Northwest here that's vertically integrated, generation, transmission, distribution, prior to joining AWS. So our team is called the America Infrastructure Energy Team. And principally what we're focused on is delivering power capacity to our data centers. What's driving us behind that is trying to meet our customers' goals of increased workloads and utilizing AWS services. And so what we are doing is trying to align those customer requests with additional load requests through utilities and other suppliers to be able to meet those requests. That can look like various different things across various different regions. But I think we'll get into some of that as we continue to move forward through with some of the questions.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Travis. Glenda, if you want to go and share with us.
So my name is Glenda Oscar, and I'm an economist in the Office of Policy, specifically the Deployment and Infrastructure Group. And in that role, I'm primarily focused on reliability, but also data centers. And prior to joining the Office of Policy, I was an economist in the Office of Energy Market Regulation at the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, primarily focused on issues with transmission tariffs related to the Western Interconnect. So I'm happy to be here and happy to have this discussion. So I'll just talk about DOE specifically and the role that we've been playing with these, understanding like these data centers and large loads. So there's the AI side, which is particularly interesting, but then the energy that is needed for the data centers is something that my team and I are engaged in. So our colleagues have reached out to data centers, utilities, state regulators. We're trying to understand some of the pain points and challenges, as well as the opportunities that they're facing with these large loads. We know that estimates say that data center demand is roughly 4 to 6% as of 2023, but is projected to go up to as high as 9% in 2030. But we also understand that the problem is very regional. Right. So certain states like Virginia, Texas, and states out in the West are having different experiences with that. So a lot of what we do is we're listening and we're learning. But in addition to that, we're also letting people know about some of the resources that we currently have, especially from Bill and IRA, that can help address data center demand in particular. So I think throughout the conversation, I can say more about what those resources are, but those are really the two areas in which the work that I do at DOE touches on this topic today. So looking forward to the discussion, and thanks for inviting me.
Thanks. Commissioner Richard.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Rapper. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I'm just as interested to hear how things are going out west with the data center experience. But I will start by saying, honestly, about a year to 18 months ago, data centers really were not an issue that I thought I was going to be ever concerned about. Now, to be sure, I was very aware of all the growth that was going on in Northern Virginia, and I think everybody has probably heard that data centers, just across the Potomac River from us in Northern Virginia, really it's the largest data center market in the world. And right now, to my understanding, there are nearly 4,000 megawatts of installed data center load, and well over 1,000 megawatts that are under construction. And that's probably largely due because of its location. It's right next to Washington, D.C., or a lot of government installations around that area. I've learned that there's a robust fiber optic network, which has been very helpful to the growth of the data center in that area. Also, there's just a lot of space out in Northern Virginia. But honestly, in the news, I was hearing primarily a lot of issues about zoning. There were a lot of concerns about the development in rural areas, historic areas, places where people really valued the the natural beauty, and things were starting to creep into those parts of the Northern Virginia, and even places that were already developed. These centers are quite large, and so you are having the juxtaposition between these neighborhoods, and suddenly right there are these large buildings that were going in. So that was kind of the extent of really where it was in the news. And then suddenly last August, before our commission, we had a data center developer file at our commission a request for an exemption from our CPCN. That's a certificate of public convenience and necessity. And they wanted an exemption for 168 3-megawatt diesel generators for a total of about 504 megawatts for backup power. And this was going to be for one of the first tenants of a proposed 21-acre data center campus, which eventually envisions will use over 2,500 megawatts in the future. So just for comparison and some context, I'm sitting here in Baltimore, Maryland's largest city, And we have a peak demand here for the city of about 6,500 megawatts. So this was like essentially a proposed plan to put like a city right outside of Frederick, Maryland, right on the Potomac River across from where all these the data centers are. So anyway, just to get back to the request, while our commission had in the past authorized backup generators for these various uses, hospitals and we were first just kind of struck, blown away, if you will, by the scale. Here they're talking about a 504 megawatt diesel power plant that they did not want to go through our regular CPCN review. And so, first we kind of questioned whether we even had the authority, the statutory authority to grant such a request. And even if the facility was intended for emergency power and not grid connected, that was still a lot for us to consider. So honestly, we initially rejected the waiver request. Shortly thereafter, a reconsideration request was filed at the commission. And it was really at that time, I think a lot of us became better aware that it was in our state policy to try to promote data centers. And in fact, we became aware that since 2020, data centers which locate or expand in Maryland and create new full-time jobs can receive an exemption from our state sales and use tax for up to 20 years. So it was also our own state policy that was driving this. So on that reconsideration, we did go ahead and exercise our authority to waive around 25 of the generators, or about 70 megawatts, which we understood would allow for the first phase of the proposed project to proceed. However, we also learned at that point that data center developers and builders are quite powerful, and they were not at all happy with our decision. So in the next legislative session, that was just, this last session for us, 2024, a bill was advanced by our governor and supported by the developers, the data center developers. And essentially they exempted data centers from the CPCN process and really out from under the jurisdiction of the Maryland Public Service Commission. So I guess I thought initially that might be the end of the story for us, that we would never have to worry about these facilities again. However, at the very same time, during the same legislative session, Constellation Energy raised the possibility of a data center co-location at its Calvert Cliff nuclear power station here in Maryland. And given the powerful interest on, both in favor and opposed to that co-location, and the potential diversion of energy from the local grid and the possible, possibly even off the distribution network, we were also tasked at that time to provide a study to our legislature, really looking at the potential impacts of co-location on ratepayers, wholesale markets, regional planning, and the reliability of the electric grid, and to investigate possible mitigation measures to address any of these projects. And we just, in fact, last week did hold a technical conference, and we are now, preparing, starting to look at preparing our report to the legislature, which is due in December. So I note that we have a number of questions. So why don't I just go ahead and pause there? That kind of hopefully gives you a sense of our experience, at least Maryland Public Service Commission's experience to date with the data centers, and then I can get a little more into what else is happening, not only in Maryland, but just in our general region and PGM generally. So thank you. I'll pause there. Look forward to the discussion.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. And I am a former commissioner, not a current commissioner. While I appreciate the deference, I'm Chris to all of you.
Right. I always, once a commissioner, always commissioner. So.
Thank you for that. I answer better to Chris these days. I'm just, but you do what you're comfortable
Okay.
with. I think that's so interesting. I'm glad we had you go last, Commissioner, because commissions traditionally have had a particular role that is sort of no longer the case, right? When you have a constituency or a lobby that is very powerful, they're going to go through the legislature to ask that whatever it is in the statute that isn't working for them, that be changed. And I know one of the discussions we've had prior to this is the data center can get built in as little as 18 months, but power, the availability of power doesn't occur that quickly. It can't be created that quickly. And so I am curious, because the discussion up till now, we talk about large loads as a group, right? And some people see that as a particular megawatt amount or greater. What we haven't talked about, and Travis, this may be a question for you, and I'm happy to have anyone else address it as well. I understand now, actually, in prepping for this panel, that and it would seem reasonable, there are different types of data centers and that they have different needs. So can you address, just kind of as a threshold matter, what are the different types of data centers that are popping up across the country and the variability or the difference between the energy needs that those different types of data centers might have?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Chris. I think, it's something that we all can probably likely agree to is that, our society as a whole is becoming increasingly reliant upon electricity as we see, the adoption of smartphones almost in everybody's hand, and all of the things that drive the utilization across those smartphones, as well as there's increasing electrification across the manufacturing, as well as, electrification of transportation. And so it's not just, this data center load that's driving the additional request for energy. And sometimes we lose sight of that. But as we think about the different types of data centers and how we might be able to address those, each one is unique in the essence of what its usage requirements looks like. And some of that's built on the types of customers that use it. So a customer that might, in terms of our data centers, that might be looking to, move some of their IT off premise and onto a data center, might be just looking at a single day backup where all they do is access, storage device once a day, and it's a very minimal usage and tax on in terms of electricity. And then you have, the acceleration we talked about, AI and machine learning models, which might be like, using enormous amounts of electricity to run modeling. And so not all of those are equal in essence when we look at the locations and how the needs of those data centers. And so what we do is we look at what our customers' needs are, and then we then size our data centers in accordance with those customers' needs. And then we work with local utilities and suppliers to align the timelines and delivery of the power capacity that's going to meet those customers' needs. So it's really being driven by what our customers want, and that's what the primary concern is that we're looking to do.
Okay, so there's no way to anticipate and I mean, what I think I heard you say, because I know from our perspective, right, and looking at reliability on the grid, we'd love to be able to anticipate the load, and that doesn't seem to be a thing, right? People are locating, as Commissioner Richard expressed, in different places for different reasons, right? Whether it's availability of resources or cost of power or the resource mix itself. Is there a way that any of y'all can see that we could begin to anticipate load? And I'm going to interrupt myself for a minute, because what I forgot to say was people enter questions through the chat, but we actually manage that on the back end. So you all don't have to pay attention simultaneously to the conversation and the chat. My team's really great about prompting me. They'll merge some of the questions as those come in. So you guys can focus on the conversation, and I don't multitask well that way. So we help by managing that on the back end, and then we'll ask those. And so to anyone who's listening, if you have any questions, please, as we go through the conversation, please go ahead and enter those, and we will ask them as we have opportunity. But sorry, back to my question then. The ability to anticipate, is there any from any of you? Have we seen a pattern? Have we seen signs?
Yeah, I think, and this is a great point. Well, first, thanks for managing all the questions, because personally, I'm not an expert in that. So I appreciate your staff handling that and helping us focus on the conversation. But, you know, we're not new to the data center business by any stretch of the imagination. We've been doing this for a number of years. And as a result, like places where we have pretty established service and relationships with folks, we provide forecasts associated with what our needs are, and we provide those directly to the utilities that we work with. And then, you know, I know from being involved in multiple sort of processes associated with this, that those forecasts are then provided to like regional planners and forecasts as well and aggregated. Sometimes, you know, different forecasts, you know, people have different opinions about what those forecasts are, how real they are, what the timelines associated with them are. And, you know, as many people as probably listening today probably have a different opinion about what that looks like. And so the best that we can do is we can provide that forecast of what our best guess is of what we're anticipating our needs are, and then working to put the different infrastructure elements in place to support those.
Okay, thanks for that, Clint. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I'm kind of on the other side of this, just also trying to understand what we should expect in our regions. You know, up to this point, you know, we had forecasts even as late as last November that indicated load growth in Maryland would be along the lines of 1, you know, maybe 2%. And that was largely due to, you know, some of our decarbonization goals, electrification, and in those types of policies. But it seemed like it was rather sudden that, you know, in PJM, the 2022 RTEP regional and starting transmission enhancement plan suddenly had to go to be reopened. And, you know, from that, we had suddenly a new demand expectation of 7,500 megawatts in PJM. And that really drove some very sudden, I would call it, requirements for intermediate needs in transmission planning. Along the lines of about $5.1 billion. So, you know, hopefully we do need to get a better handle on what are the forecasts and how can we have a more, I guess, planned, a planned approach to making sure we meet those needs. Because what we're facing now are, you know, again, very expensive. And, you know, a lot of these costs, even with Maryland not growing in a data center at this point as fast as some of our neighbors, we're still having to foot the bill for these transmission upgrades. So again, we just need to have some, I guess, certainty and transparency into what are the expectations, because again, recent load forecast growth and even expectations of the expansion of our transmission system really weren't anticipating today what we're actually facing.
Agreed. I think that is a huge challenge across the country. Glenda, I'm wondering, from your perspective at DOE, is what I know is different departments in DOE, perhaps your team, perhaps not, they're looking for opportunities to invest in some of these things. Is DOE considering location in any of its grant opportunities, or I'm wondering if they're looking across the country to see where there may be excess resources, or where, whether there are considerations like that being had through DOE as you all look to the reliability component of these data centers.
Thank you for the question. So I think we've been hearing a lot of what Travis and Commissioner Richard has been saying in terms of, you know, where they are locating or aiming to locate some of these data centers, and what the different needs for different types of data centers may be. So DOE is definitely interested in learning more on the ways that we can help with that. But specifically, I think one of the areas where we think in the near term could be very useful is leveraging energy community opportunities to reuse some infrastructure at retired coal facilities. You've also heard in the news that there have been some, 3 Mile Island, it was just announced that in Palisades that some of the nuclear plants are restarted. So I think in the near term, these are some areas where we feel like DOE definitely has the resources to help support the energy infrastructure that will be needed for the data centers.
Okay, so they're looking at that piece of the puzzle in order to help with getting them online more quickly. I just want to make sure I heard that correctly. If you're utilizing the lines, which is a great idea, right?
Yeah, so for the quickly is relative, right? And so I know that there's a timeline mismatch, right, between data centers needs, I think 18 months to like 2 years, and then how utilities may decide to react to the infrastructure needs that a data center might demand. I think for us, to the question of is DOE looking at locations and places for opportunities? So with the coal sites in particular, that land could potentially be used to site a data center. That land may also have access to interconnection, which is also an important part for energy infrastructure, right? So that's one part of it, and also, as I said, with the nuclear plants, providing the energy that may be needed to support the data centers. I think us as well as other people in the industry are interested in learning more about the forecasts with greater certainty. And I think as we learn more about those, maybe there are other resources or programs that might be able to speak specifically to those regional needs. But in the interim, I think those are definitely areas where we have, especially with the nuclear, that's our loan programs office that's been helping to support that. So we do have programs at DOE that can help support that.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that, Glenda. Are there, with regard to the forecasts, and Travis, you're the one who I think initially brought that up, that you all are providing forecasts for things. Is there more that we can do to be better partners? We have a great balance, I think, of different parts of the electric community that have to be involved in these conversations. What can we do to help? Because I think part of the point of Commissioner's intro is there's an economic benefit here, right? The governor was asked to do a particular thing and the legislature took it over because there's an economic benefit to these states for jobs and other things. And so what can the group of us do? What can different stakeholders do to sort of assist in getting those forecasts right and helping move the ball?
Yeah, I'll draw back on, I think, even a conversation that occurred in last month's webinar in terms of like the idea of collaboration. I think that, I don't want to speak for the whole data center community by any stretch of the imagination, but there is an interest on our part to be involved in the conversation and to participate actively in it. We also, while certain things are, certainly confidential and privileged, and you can't go into all the details, there are certain things that we can share, and collectively that sheds light and helps people understand what's driving the forecast. I will say that we're very interested in collaboration across regional planning efforts and helping drive those those conversations. We're also very invested in technology delivery that can help make more efficient use of the existing system, and taking advantage of DOE programs, helping drive like consideration of grid enhancing technologies that can support utility efficiency in multiple different locations. Like, we're involved in those conversations and helping support those and want to continue to support those moving forward. So I think that that's part of this is an open call for, if you have questions and you don't understand like what's behind this or how real this is like ask those questions. And it's an education opportunity, right? For similar to what's happening here today, like we're able to help people understand what is behind this and what's driving this. And then, from that, we can derive conclusions, timelines, deliverables, and all of the different things that would go with that.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just jump in, you know, as welcome the partnership with both the Department of Energy and with the developers of data centers. We are in Maryland in a you know, a resource constraint. We really lack. I guess we just say we have a need to focus on resource adequacy. Right now, we do have, you know, we appreciate the fact that many of these data centers and the developers want clean energy, and they're doing a lot to help drive, I think, the demand for clean energy in our region. But there are also, I mean, a couple of examples. You heard about the nuclear energy, you know, plants. The fact that you know, some are doing co-locations, or that could be a bit of a problem, because without replacement of those energy resources, you know, we are going to actually just be further in a hole. Right now, you know, Maryland imports about 40% of its electricity from out of state. Calvert Cliffs is kind of one of those bedrock in-state assets that we depend on. So if you know, someone just co-locates and even suggest not network, we have to really kind of look through the implications of what that'll be to our resources. It would, as we drive for decarbonization and cleaner resources, if we lose what we have, and just end up bringing in, importing, and enabling the continued operation of coal plants and other fossil plants, that really doesn't advance some of our goals. So, you know, just having that, I guess, you know, collaboration, partnership. You know, we do have interests, and we're close to getting full BOM, Bureau of Offshore Energy Management, authorization to start offshore wind just off the Delaware and Maryland coast. So, you know, having those kind of support from data centers there to help the economics work would be great. What we see happening at 3 Mile Island, that's kind of exciting, because that'll be a resource that comes online, provides clean energy for a large data center, and is likely to provide some to the local grid. So that's that's helping with the decarbonization. But again, when you look up to what's happening at Susquehanna, on the other hand, that raises a concern, which is also a nuclear power plant just north of us in Pennsylvania. How will we replace those resources that may go to just enabling a data center? So again, we are supportive, and we want to see, I would say in today's climate, we need to have these data centers, and many of our states want them, but we do need to again, work together to make sure we have the adequate resources to support them, and we need the clean resources.
Go ahead, Glenda.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Richards. So in addition to some of the retired coal plants and the nuclear plants that are restarting, I think DOE is also focused on commercializing key technologies, clean, firm technologies that will be useful in the space. Next generation geothermal, advanced nuclear, long duration storage, right? So we are also focused on commercializing those, and in the near to medium term, so that they can be useful resources for this community, and just for you know, load growth more generally, right? As we mentioned earlier, domestic manufacturing is expanding, electrification of vehicles is also important, and so having those key technologies commercialized by then, I think, would be very useful.
Yeah, so I like that all three of you, I think, just hit on one of the things that I think we struggle with, at least in the West. And I think if people are honest about the conversation, I think we're struggling across the country, and that is, we don't have enough resources to meet what is already going on, right? Electrification and cleaning the grid, greening the grid, and all the things, right? And so we have this phrase that we've been using, everything, everywhere, all at once. And I think each of you have sort of connected with that in your last comments. So is this of primary importance? I mean, it feels like it is from a reliability perspective. These large loads are coming on. We don't have the energy right now to be able to meet that load. It's important that we move in a particular direction. in an environment that used to move slowly and that now has taken to moving to shiny objects, partly because there's so much to pay attention to, right? How do we make sure that this conversation about large loads, about how it impacts reliability, how do we make sure that we're talking to the right people at the right levels and that it stays in the forefront of those energy conversations?
I mean, I don't want to go first on all these questions. I feel like let's flip the script, and I think this is like a perfect one for Glenda to take. So anyways.
Okay, so I don't mind. I was smiling because so the other part of my portfolio is focusing on issues related to reliability. And last week I was part of one convening that was focused on resource adequacy, another one that was focused on reliability. So this topic comes up, right? This topic comes up. It's at the forefront of people's minds. And so not for lack of I think it is on the forefront of people's mind. It is a part of our discussions on reliability and resource adequacy. And so I don't worry about that part, right? And so, but I think the part that we should continue to do well on is like this collaboration, right? The conversations that we're having, even if they're targeted solutions that can help with dealing with some of the issues that states are facing and some of the opportunities they see there, and matching them and meeting them with some of the needs that data center owners and operators have. So for me, I don't speak on behalf of this group or DOE largely, but I don't worry about being a part of a conversation that does not mention data centers or large loads in some way. It is important to us, and it is part of most conversations that deal with reliability.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, this conversation, it's actually quite an urgent conversation here in the Mid-Atlantic and PJM generally. We at our last base residual auction, the PJM base residual auction, were stunned when it came back that we may see, it was an 800% increase in the cost of capacity that will go into the 25-26 delivery year. So there's a lot of things that went into that, but one of the drivers is the fact that we are, having to, we have a lack of resources. We need to really start focusing on resource adequacy. We can only build so many transmission lines to fix these things. We need to have resources, and we want to have the resources that fit our state policies. So it's already urgent for us as we take a look at the coming base residual auctions, our capacity costs, our energy costs, and so that just added on to as we're looking at various deactivations of some of our fossil facilities that we're gonna basically have to slow down through reliability must run contracts, and so it really, to support where we want to go as a state, as we address climate change and electrification, we're going to have to. We're already focused on this, and the data center just really adds again to the urgency of us figuring this out.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought this up because one of the things that people often don't know about data centers is reliability is super important to the operation of a data center. We have very high standards in terms of reliability and being able to meet our customers' needs. And, Commissioner brought this up in sense of, the request for backup generation, right? Oftentimes data center providers will, pair their electricity needs with backup generation on site to make sure that the reliability is there. So, a long way of saying, like, we're not a stranger to that conversation and reliability, and it's very critical to us, and we want to be at the table helping support that from a grid perspective, from a regional perspective. In the West, we're very concerned about resource adequacy, like what does that look like, and what hours of the years are, where we're most critical, and how do we make sure that we have the resource adequacy across the system to be able to supply those needs, especially as the grid evolves and the market evolves as well, right? The West is a little different than other places where, perhaps there might be an organized market that's operating, and, how are those differences fully understood, and then how do we address the, concerns that come up as a result of that? And one of the things that, AWS is very proud of is that, we were able to achieve our 100% renewable energy goal 7 years earlier than we expected. And maybe not expected, but, we were able to announce that this last year. But we also know that there's a lot more work that needs to continue to happen in order to meet our climate pledge commitment of net zero carbon. So what does that look like? We're very familiar with the fact that you can't just connect a solar facility to a data center and think that that's going to provide the reliability that I started this conversation with. So it needs to be coupled with other technologies, other different resources, and those things all have to work together. I think there's a long way of saying that there's no one silver bullet that's going to solve all of these problems. There's a lot of different solutions, and all of them warrant us making progress in regards to those different solutions. One of the things that is most important to us is that we're taking active steps forward. And, we can get stuck in this a state where we're just need to continue to study and continue to talk and continue to go in circles over the same problem over and over again. And maybe paralysis analysis, where we, analysis by we look at the situation and come up with the same answer over and over and over again, right? And that's something that we're very interested in moving forward with, different steps to help solve the problem.
I appreciate, Travis, that you pointed out that reliability is important to the work of those data centers. I think that sometimes those kinds of what might seem to be obvious comments are not to the people on the other side, right? The people that are worried about the build out, the people that are worried about the resources, the people that are worried about all the things. Being able to partner with an industry that needs power, because reliability of that power is just as important to the industry that's being built, the large load industry, right? Data centers. That reliability of the grid is just as important to them as it is to the people who are providing the power. And I think that point can't be understated, that it really, particularly with this kind of load, it has to be a partnership for the benefit of reliability. So we're getting questions from the audience. The first one is a little long, so I'm gonna have to concentrate on my other screen to read it to you. Glenda, did you have something you wanted to add to that?
I wanted to just add one more thing too. Travis, thank you for that point. And another area where DOE is very interested in is how can we enable data center flexibility and storage solutions so that data centers are not just viewed as like an energy burden, but also an asset to the grid itself, right? So just to add to what Travis said, I think that's something that we're definitely very interested in for reliability and resource adequacy issues.
Is that something, Glenda, that you think? I think that's a great point. Are we to that step? And I ask that sincerely because we're in a reactionary mode in large part, right? From a utility standpoint and a commission standpoint, I think on approving and trying to make sure that everybody's going to get the energy they need. How do we get to that point? Is it all part and parcel, or is it like step 2, ways that the data centers can support the grid?
So that's what we're learning more about. I think EPRI has a program where they're looking at the opportunities that data centers can have in terms of flexibility. Our own Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, they have a Center for Data Center Energy Efficiency. They're looking at these issues as well. But I think there's more to come. I think that, I think that data centers going forward could be an asset to the grid in these different ways, especially in terms of flexibility, even though I know that, their energy demands are very high, as Travis explained. But I do think that's a promising area.
Yeah, I mean, I just, quickly, I'll second that. And, we've invested in, battery energy storage systems of various different sizes and different battery technologies, chemistries to help support and move forward with this. And oftentimes the way that we do this is we partner with local utilities to help identify like, how can we do this in tandem with you to both create learning opportunities for how this can work to support everyone's overall objectives and goals, as well as support increased data center capacity and delivery of energy across the system in the most efficient manner possible.
That makes sense. I hope all those conversations are occurring with all the people. I think we don't know what we don't know sometimes, right? And different people in different parts of the country are in different places, which is part of why I'm so excited to have this group on the panel. So I'm going to ask the long question. And if it's something that you all don't know the answer to or can't answer, then that's fine too. There's a citation to a NERC standard, which I know sort of usually sends me sideways. I'm not super knowledgeable. It's not my role, right, to know the NERC standards and how exactly they operate. But it says, as a last line of defense, to preserve the system during a disturbance and avoid a total blackout. Under NERC standard PRC 006, each utility servicing load must have in place a process for automatic under-frequency load shedding when frequency declines to certain predetermined levels. With the new large load segregate, will the new large load segregate a portion of their load for inclusion in these mandatory program requirements, or has it even been raised?
I mean, I think it's an evolving story at this moment that we find ourselves in. Is nothing definitive has been publicly disclosed in terms of what those requirements are and how you would do that. That being said, I will say that we're in various conversations, like I just alluded to, with utilities and regulators associated with how can we support both under frequency, events across the system, as well as, any other grid disturbances, and what does that look like to maintain reliability and operations at the highest level for everybody that's involved. So.
I know that one's wonky for even me. Glenda or Richard, do you want to weigh in on that at all?
Not really. That seemed more like an industry question. I know some of these types of questions came up in our technical conference last week about how do you ensure grid reliability with large load interconnections. And what I learned at that technical conference, that there are different configurations. If you have co-located, even in those circumstances, there could be different configurations that will, again, trigger different requirement standards and potential, grid upgrades to address any kind of violations, thermal violations that might occur from those interconnections. So again, we're kind of just learning ourselves, here at the commission, largely so we can inform our legislature. But again, it just seems that there are a lot of different configurations that data centers are considering, I guess, to address this reliability, including behind the meter backup generation, like what we faced in our hearing proceeding last August.
So, and a related question that came in from the audience is, are data centers the type of customer that could be curtailed or that would agree to be curtailed, like a special contract customer, right? That they could get a lower rate per kilowatt or have a different kind of rate structure by agreeing to be curtailed? Or is it just not that kind of industry? That'd be Travis, I'm sure, for an answer on that one.
Yeah, there certainly are unique constructs that can be put in place to help support that. And like we started the conversation with, like, not every data center is the same, right? Like they're vastly different. There are different connection standards. There's different resource constraints in different regions. And you almost need to look at the specific use case, if you will, or like the specific location where that data center is located and what the constraints are that are around that you're trying to solve. And I firmly believe that there are solutions to all of those problems. Now, they might not always align with everybody's expectations in terms of timelines and cost and all of those things. And that's where we have an opportunity to come together and collaborate. But the solutions are there. We just need to spend the time focusing on the specific issue that we're trying to address in that specific location. And I think that there are ways for us to find ways through that and work together on it.
I appreciate that, Travis. I am curious, I feel like we're in a realm of, we don't know what we don't know as we go forward. And I think Commissioner Richard, you've experienced some of that, right? With regard to the CPCN that you explained at the beginning, applying for a CPCN, you denying it on a bunch of grounds that I have a reasonable, knowledge of why that would have been the course of action until a rehearing or reconsideration phase when you take some more things into account and other arguments that are made. And I can also appreciate that whoever it is that's lobbying on the side of wanting the ability to have a waiver from that CPCN has some pretty good lawyers on their side making those arguments, right? And when you look at the public policy of the state and what the state wants to achieve on a larger scale, those are things that don't initially maybe come into that docket, those arguments, until you take an additional look at it. Are there things that you all can share that you've run across as kind of aha moments that you've had as you've worked your way through some of this that maybe all parts of the country haven't experienced?
That is an interesting question. Aha moments. I think it's really as we're kind of working our way through some of these initial large developments that want to come to our state. I do know we do have already several data centers. And in fact, in some of our national various government installations, our national security installations. I had the opportunity, in a non-classified setting to go on site and see some pretty remarkable buildings that, it almost looked like it was a rectangular cake frosted that had water running down the top of it, I guess for cooling purposes. And I was pretty fascinated by that. So we have these facilities, but it's really trying to make sure that we understand the benefits and the costs of moving forward, making sure that we have the infrastructure in place, understanding how it impacts our other important state policies for again, decarbonization, addressing climate change, economic justice. These are also important. We're already seeing large, infrastructure projects to support regionally increases in load. A lot of it being driven by data centers. So there is that. Well, it's going to go somewhere. It likes generally our region. And so wouldn't we benefit again from getting some of the pros and not just some of the costs? So I think that's what we're really kind of trying to weigh right now, and hopefully come up with some good recommendations. It's not just me. I mean, we have some support to go through all the data that we've collected and hopefully provide some solid information for our policymakers on what a prudent path forward is. But again, it's happening. We need to have these centers. And so we just need to make sure we balance all of our state needs when we proceed with the policies.
Linda, Travis, anything on the aha side of, oh, I didn't think about that, but yeah, we ought to really bring that into the conversation, or we really ought to consider that as we move forward or look at things differently?
For me, I think, we're really encouraged by the fact that there's increased attention by policymakers in the last, couple of years. and from both sides, frankly, because, you know, we see significant obstacles to growth, both generation interconnection policies and procedures, transmission infrastructure development and permitting, things we haven't spent much time talking about here today, but those are critical conversations that have like large impacts to, you know, not just data center growth, but the electrification growth across the entire US and what that looks like. And so at the end of the day, like what we're excited about is, you know, supporting comprehensive energy policies that have, you know, transmission, generation, cost allocation principles, like all of those things wrapped up together that, you know, we can align on and support moving forward. We recognize that it's probably not adequate where we are today, both at a local level as well as at a national level, right? So there are some opportunities for us to make some wholesale improvements there. And you know, I'll harken back to, I think the best way that we're going to be able to find something to move forward with that we all could agree with is supporting that collaborative mindset of, you know, we're in a critical time right now. We have some critical decisions before us. How can we take the steps forward and move that conversation in the direction it needs to be?
Glenda, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I guess in line with what Travis was saying, I do think that collaboration is going to be key. Being proactive is going to be key. And so I do want to highlight, I guess, from the USG perspective, some other ways in which folks have been engaged with the data center community. I shared with the group, but I can share it after this discussion. Like on September 12th, the White House held a convening where it invited members from the industry, as well as Secretary of Energy, Secretary of Commerce, to have a conversation on ways in which they can move forward on the issue of data centers. I know for us here at DOE, we created like a resource hub that was specific to data center load growth, and even a business email where the email will be routed to my colleagues and I for people who are particularly interested in accessing some of our resources that are specific to data center needs. And so so I just want to encourage people that, you know, the collaboration is going to be key. Being proactive is going to be key. And I think I am encouraged by conversations like this and our ability to continue to work together to try to find solutions to these problems. The aha, I guess, for me is just like how encouraged I am by that, right? And so so yeah, thank you.
And I know my Travis, not the Travis that's speaking on the panel with us, but put in the chat those links that you had provided us earlier. And so that people could access those. I'm curious, this is where I, as the moderator, just sort of get to ask whatever pops in my head, which is random. So good luck to y'all. But no, seriously, I mean, I know we're running short on time, but we always talk about data centers, or I think the normal presumption, particularly about data centers, is that they want a clean, green energy to produce their power. Is that across the board true, or is it okay to continue to use coal for a while in order, would they rather, I guess the balance would be, would they rather have their data center built and utilizing a carbon emitting resource for a little while to give time for other energy resources to be built? Or are, as a general rule, is it you all's experience that data centers do lean towards wanting the clean green energy to produce their power?
I think that might be targeted more at me, but you know, generally speaking, I don't think like all data center owners and operators are the same. And what I can speak to is like what our opinions are is like we have, you know, significant carbon-free renewable energy goals that are driving Amazon. And behind those goals, we're looking at putting in place and investing in the technology, some of the which that Glenda mentioned, to help accelerate that. And there's an opportunity, I think, as we see an increased demand, to also increase the acceleration of clean, free, you know, free from carbon emission technologies that help support that. And don't believe that there's one single type of resource that's going to meet all of our needs holistically. And so what that means for me anyways, and this is in my opinion, is that we have to invest in multiple different technologies and continue to advance each of those. I think that there are large scale resources that can provide, significant benefits. And we're starting to see some of those things pop up. But there are also some other things that could be large scale influencers in the future that just need some continued investment and continued development over the next couple of years. And in the next 3 to 5 years, we might see those emerging. And so those are also things that we're interested in exploring and moving forward with.
Yeah, go on, sorry.
I just was going to say, I think that's an important detail because I think a presumption occurs in that realm because of the kind of technology that it is and what it does, that they want clean green energy. And I appreciate, Travis, your perspective and knowledge on knowing that that's not a presumption that we ought to necessarily make. I'm so grateful for all y'all. We are at time, and I know everyone always has commitments at the hour, other places. I really appreciate your willingness to come on and talk with us. I think this is a really important conversation going forward. I'm so grateful to have you each as a resource. And now that you've talked with us once, hopefully you'll come back and talk with us again, because the collaboration piece is really important to us as well. And if we can hook you up with any people on our side of the grid, then we want to be here as a resource for you as well.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate the invitation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Definitely open to collaboration.
Great. Thanks, guys. Travis English, I'm going to kick it back to you to wrap us up.
I will just echo that gratitude. Glenda, thank you. And Commissioner Richard and Travis, appreciate you joining us. Glenda had mentioned those resources. I did put them in the chat for DOE, so go ahead and take a look at those. We will also be posting a recording and a copy of the slide deck that we had that will have a link to those resources as well. And then mark your calendar. Next month, we'll do this again on the 6th of next month at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, and we'll continue the discussion about reliability in the West. Again, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I appreciate your time.